Welcome to this recorded online seminar from Aspire Employability Leisure. This online seminar focuses on workforce diversity, training and employing disabled people in the fitness and leisure sector. It aims to bring to life and support organisations in the implementation of the Employability Leisure Guidance. If you do not already have your copy, download the leisure guides now. There are 3 to choose from. Guide A is aimed at disabled people. Guide B is for training providers and awarding organisations. Guide C is for employers. If you need to do so, pause the video now. Click on the link to download your copies now. To maximise the use of this online seminar, we recommend the following. Watch and listen to this in your own time and at your own pace. You can return to it as many times as you like. Use the seminar in conjunction with the leisure guides. We recommend that you use this as a tool for information and conversation in your workplace and with your colleagues. There are opportunities throughout to pause the video and undertake a task or have some time to think. It is okay to be honest, have debate, and also respect one another in your conversations. Remember that what you put in, you take out, so eliminate any distractions and really put your all into this. It's nearly time to get started, so if you need to get a cup of tea or whatever your choice of refreshment is, please do so now. And then we'll get started. Seminar outcomes. By the end of this seminar, you should be able to persuade your colleagues of the benefits and importance of creating an inclusive approach for disabled people in training and/or employment in the leisure sector. 2. Identify and understand the challenges disabled people face in accessing training and employment in the leisure sector. 3. Consider your own workplace, practice and culture compared with the principles and factors of an inclusive culture. And finally, 4. Explore potential solutions supported by the guides and devise 3 actions for change. To get us started and as an introduction, please select one of these videos that is most relevant for you and your organisation. Either click on the video for training providers or the video for employers. Now that you have had an opportunity to watch one of the videos, this is time for you to have a reflection upon what you have watched and consider if you had any light bulb moments. If you're an employer, consider what are the benefits to recruiting disabled people in the leisure sector? And what considerations or adaptations were highlighted in the video that enable disabled people to be successful in recruitment or in the workplace? As a training provider, consider what barriers did you identify within the video that may be preventing disabled people accessing learning and training? And what considerations or adaptations were highlighted in the video that enable disabled people to access learning and training? Now pause the seminar to consider these questions, have some reflections and some discussions. Give yourself approximately 10 minutes, but if you need more time, go for it. Rejoin the seminar when you are ready. Let us explore the benefits further and consider the business opportunities. Disabled people represent a talent pool of potential staff who can bring a unique perspective to the workforce. Widening your search and ensuring your recruitment process is inclusive enables you to find that amazing person you are looking for. Many disabled people face barriers every day, so they are often resilient, empathetic, and creative at finding solutions. Surely these are skills that we would love in all of our members of staff. Their lived experience also makes them an expert by experience. They can be a fantastic role model for others, and having disabled people represented in your centre or on your courses encourages and supports others with impairments or difference to feel more comfortable in the environment. They can use their unique insights and empathy to help your decision making and provision to be more inclusive, benefiting more disabled people to access your provision. As mentioned before, there is an appetite to take part in physical activity amongst the disability community, which is untapped. By training and recruiting more disabled people in the sector, this can open the doors through representation and improve customer experience. Imagine if you untapped that 20% of the local community that you are currently not reaching. This makes financial sense. Also, disabled people have their own networks of families and friends, so therefore this untapped potential can grow further. Plus, we know the value of the purple pound, 87.5 billion disposable income in the UK. Also, disabled people are a new market for training. Disabled people want the opportunities for training and employment. So this is also an opportunity to get more people on your courses if you're a training provider. The approach that we are advocating links in with a generic approach around organisations being more inclusive within their culture. An inclusive culture benefits everyone. It increases staff morale, productivity and retention. Being an inclusive training provider or employer will enable more people to feel comfortable around disability and diversity, and the practical steps taken often benefit everyone. Time to think. Pause the seminar for up to 5 minutes and consider how this approach would benefit your organisation. Welcome back. Did you think of any of these benefits for your organisation as either a leisure operator or training provider awarding organisation? Let's consider the benefits for everyone. For leisure operators, there's the benefit of increasing diversity of workforce, employing staff with knowledge of disability, attracting more disabled customers, and closing the gap between disabled and non-disabled people. For training providers and awarding organisations, it's an opportunity to increase the diversity in groups of learners, increase knowledge about disability and disabled people across your learners, gain experience of adjusting, training and assessment through their own lived experience, testing that inclusive policies work in real life. It can also enhance company reputation and, as we've talked about before, tap into potential source of new learners. There are also benefits to disabled people. It enables a widening of career choices. It can also be a route into volunteering or employment that might not already be there. It can also turn a passion for physical and mental well-being into a career. There really are benefits for everyone. We recommend that a drive for workforce diversity is led and advocated from the top of your organisation, and that everyone in your organisation is informed and trained of the benefits of an inclusive approach. Pause the seminar now to think about what you have learnt so far and think about at least one persuasive statement to encourage your colleagues of the benefits and importance of creating an inclusive approach for disabled people in training and/or employment. We hope that you have thought of that one key statement that can help you to encourage your colleagues. We also know that you need to be confident in your approach to persuading others, and you may need to draw upon the following skills to do so. Number 1, utilise logic and reasoning. The stats speak for themselves, the untapped market, whatever that might be in terms of business benefit, use that logic in your argument. Create a safe and dedicated space for the conversation. Can you get this onto the agendas of your meetings? Be prepared and be clear in your communication and your message. Be resilient and persistent. It might take you a few times to get across your statement to others. And offer solutions. The guides are there to support you. Use those as a plan, offer solutions to get across that this is possible. It is important to have consistent messaging and think about the different audiences you might need to influence. This may be upwards, sideways, or downwards within your organisation, but you also may need to consider the messaging across your broader spectrum of customers. For us to consider solutions, we must consider potential barriers and challenges. We will now utilise scenarios to identify and understand the challenges disabled people face in accessing training and employment in the leisure sector. Consider the following scenarios. Pause the seminar after reading each story and give time to think or discuss with colleagues the potential challenges or barriers being faced by these individuals. These two scenarios of Anna and Fred are perfect for training providers and awarding organisations to consider. Let's find out more about how we could reach and support Anna into training. Anna is 25 years old and is visually impaired. Anna started losing her sight at the age of 13. Anna is well educated with a degree, however, she has struggled to find employment. Anna has been a regular member of her local leisure facility for the last 5 years. Anna is known by all of the staff for her outgoing and friendly personality. Anna has considered whether she could become a fitness instructor. Task 1. List the potential challenges Anna might face in accessing learning and training to become a fitness instructor. Now let's consider how we might reach and support Fred into training. Fred is 40 years old and is a wheelchair user following a lower spinal injury. He has been a wheelchair user for 5 years. Previous to his injury, Fred played rugby and lived an active lifestyle. Fred has recently started going back to the gym, although he finds the gym a bit intimidating and unwelcoming. Fred is employed in a job he hates and he wishes he could do a job more aligned to his interests. Task 2. List the potential challenges Fred might face in accessing learning and training in the leisure sector and gaining confidence to follow a new career path. We have 2 scenarios here for employers to consider. First of all, let's think about Sam. Could you employ Sam? Sam is 28 years old. Sam has dyspraxia, which affects her balance, combining movements in a controlled sequence, time management, and fine motor skills. Sam has developed tactics to support her to improve her time management, and her proudest moment was completing a business administration apprenticeship. You are currently advertising for a receptionist. Sam is interested, but she is worried that she will not be considered for the role due to her impairment. Task 1. Consider the different stages of your recruitment process, including induction. What are the potential challenges Sam might face? Now let's consider how we could support Javan. Javan is 45 years old. Javan has been working in your centre for 10 years as a personal trainer. Recently, Javan has been diagnosed with osteoarthritis in his hip. This has started to affect Javan's mobility and causes pain when he is on his feet for more than 4 hours. Due to the need to rest and the pain he is enduring after an 8-hour shift, Javan has gradually become less engaged in social interaction with his colleagues and is starting to feel isolated. Task 2. Consider the challenges Javan might be facing in his role and workplace. Let us further our thinking about identifying the barriers and thinking about the root cause of them. There are 2 schools of thought. The medical model focuses on the person's impairment as the cause of the barrier, whereas the social model highlights the barriers are not caused by the impairment, but by barriers created by society. So in this image, the stairs have been put there by design and the lack of thought that a wheelchair user may come along and need to get to the top. If the designer had thought of all members of society, they would have put in a ramp, level access, or a lift to enable access. The medical model considers the person as faulty, needing diagnosis or treatment by others, and that their impairment needs to be fixed in order to participate in society. The impairment is the focus of the attention and people are labelled as different. In this model, disabled people are often segregated or access alternative services or are often excluded. The social model of disability is a different perspective and is the foundation of our positive approach to workforce diversity. The person is valued, their strengths and needs are defined by themselves, and their needs are met. Solutions to barriers to a person's equality and inclusion are identified. Organisations ensure that training and adjustments are made to include people proactively. Society evolves to be inclusive, diversity is welcomed and promoted, and the relationships between people are nurtured. If we consider this in context, a person with a visual impairment, for example, cannot access your staff handbook. Within the medical model, the option would be that they need their vision fixed, or someone would have to read it for them at home. The social model version would create audio recording or compatible screen readers to enable that person and empower that person to take part and read that staff handbook. Whilst there are many barriers and challenges that disabled people may be facing to access training or employment in the leisure sector, here are some examples of common challenges. First of all, the physical access to the environment and around the environment where your training provision may be, or the employment workforce environment. Is that accessible for all, considering a wide variety of impairments? Secondly, many disabled people may have had previous experiences that may have been negative, or they may have even faced discrimination in trying to access employment or access learning. This can affect their confidence and may deter them from applying for a job or taking part in learning. So how can you reassure? Inaccessible resources. For a disabled person, they're going to want to be able to access the resources just like anybody else. You need to think about the accessibility of those resources. A lack of support. That may be from their own network, but it also may be from colleagues on a learning programme or their colleagues in a workforce environment. Financial. Very often, disability and socioeconomic groups go hand in hand, and many disabled people are from lower socioeconomic groups. Therefore, the cost of accessing a learning programme may be prohibitive, and they may not know of some of the support services that are out there that can help them to unlock a learning programme, for example, to support them financially. Linked with perception is also this concept of representation. A lack of representation of disabled people already within a workforce or within a learning environment or the tutor workforce may make people feel less confident. They may view that there are a lack of people like them or that understand them, that have the empathy to understand. This links with perception of self. Often due to previous experiences or what other people may say, people may think that they cannot do something or that they are unlikely to get a role. And those perceptions are also of those of others. Perceptions of people who may be the other side of the desk in an interview situation, or perception of customers or fellow colleagues. When we consider the perception of others, we need to consider how unconscious bias may play a role in recruiting or assessing people. Unconscious bias exists in us all. It is important to be more aware of this and to challenge it. Here are some examples of the many forms of unconscious bias that we need to address. Confirmation bias is the inclination to draw conclusions about someone based on your personal desires, beliefs, or prejudices, and subconsciously you might be looking for evidence that back these up and therefore not looking for the positives. Therefore, when you're recruiting, it is important to provide standardised processes and questions to ensure it is fair. Beauty bias is a social behaviour where we believe attractive people are more successful, competent and qualified. There is also an affinity bias where we hire people the same as ourselves. These can both play a negative impact on disabled people if we judge people on how they look or the fact they may not be similar to the person recruiting. If we already know representation of disabled people is low in the workforce, then this will play a role. Halo effect. This is an interesting one because this places people on a pedestal after learning something impressive about them. This is also a difficult one to challenge in our thinking because as recruiters, we're looking for something that makes someone stand out, but we live in a society of privilege and many disabled people may not have had the same level of opportunities as disabled people. Therefore, how can your recruiting opportunities search for the potential and skills of someone and therefore provide balance? How can we combat unconscious bias? The first step is trying to question our own bias and if there is anything that might be influencing this in a negative way. The ways to tackle this are learning, exposure, openness, trying new things and meeting new people. We need to ensure that unconscious bias is not taking a part in our decision making. Therefore, we need to ensure that we're making more considered decisions. We need to use our policies and procedures effectively and in a standardised way. We need to set ground rules and monitor the behaviour across our organisations to ensure that unconscious bias is not playing a role and ensure that it doesn't form a part of assessment and recruitment. We need to increase our own awareness and exposure of people with disabilities. And we need to speak out if we notice bias in others. Furthermore, we need to explore the what ifs, our own concerns, and consider those as solutions. We then consider how perceptions, assumptions, or unconscious bias play out in the recruitment of disabled people employment and in training and assessment in the leisure sector. It helps us to consider the what ifs and explore the answers. These are some examples taken from the Guide for Employers. As part of your discussion with colleagues, consider the what ifs that might be crossing your mind, causing concern, and explore the solutions with a social model of disability perspective. Some employer concerns may be, it can be difficult and expensive to provide adjustments for disabled employees. An answer may be, many adjustments are inexpensive and simple to implement, such as rearranging equipment to provide better access or allowing extra breaks. Funding is also available from the government's Access to Work scheme. Another concern, disabled employers can't do some jobs. An answer, if adaptations are made when required, most disabled employers can effectively apply their skills and experience to the job role. And a final concern may be, there are likely to be many health and safety risks for a disabled person to be working in a gym. The answer, there is no health and safety legislation that would prevent a disabled person being employed. Any additional risks should be managed through making adjustments where required. In this section of the seminar, we explore potential solutions. Shortly, we will return to consider Anna, Fred, Sam and Javan. You have already considered potential solutions, and now let's try to consider how to break down those barriers with a solution-based approach which is founded in the social model of disability. We recommend that you consider the barriers you have already identified, as well as any new ones that you have now considered. We've also added a few to help you. Try to move quickly into sourcing solutions and utilise the leisure guides to help you. For the training providers and awarding bodies amongst you, let's now return to consider Anna. A couple of challenges that you may have considered include a lack of adaptation with resources and the tutor being unaware of how to include a learner with sight loss. Consider these challenges and the ones that you have thought of to source solutions. For each barrier and challenge you've identified, find a solution. Pause the video now and allow yourselves 5 to 10 minutes to consider the solutions. Welcome back. Now let's consider how we can reach and support Fred into training. Potential barriers that you may have identified may include accessible learning venues and Fred's own self-confidence. Consider these barriers and the ones that you have identified to source solutions. For each barrier or challenge you have identified, find a solution. Pause the video now and consider these for 5 to 10 minutes. For the employers amongst you, now let's consider Sam. Potential barriers that Sam may experience may be a fear of discrimination or a rigid interview process. Consider these barriers and any barriers that you have identified to source solutions. Pause the video now for 5 to 10 minutes to consider those solutions. Employers, you can now also consider how you would support Javan. Potential challenges that Javan may experience might be not feeling valued amongst his colleagues and potentially needing time off work because of the length of the shift being too long and him feeling pain. Consider these barriers and challenges as well as your own and identify solutions. Pause the video now for 5 to 10 minutes to consider those solutions. We hope by considering the scenarios you have thought of many solutions. When we consider employing a disabled person or supporting them through learning and assessment, solutions to include them may require a reasonable adjustment. Within the Equality Act, organisations are required to make reasonable adjustments to remove disadvantage and enable disabled people to access services and employment. This is an anticipatory duty. Therefore, organisations should consider the various ways that reasonable adjustments can be made in anticipation that people with a range of impairments may apply for a role or want to access a learning programme. Let us break this down. What constitutes an adjustment? This is an adaptation to change what an organisation may do in terms of their work practices or processes. You may have explored some of these in the previous task. Examples include flexible working or reviewing job duties. It is also important to consider that the adjustment must be considered as reasonable for it to work for the disabled person and your organisation. But how do we ascertain reasonableness? There are 4 key questions to ask yourself. Is it effective? Is it practical? Is it affordable? And are there adequate resources to make the adjustment? It is also worth remembering that by considering these potential adjustments in an anticipatory fashion, they are likely to benefit many more people than you think. Examples of reasonable adjustments include job carving, which is a term for customising job duties and can be used as a reasonable adjustment. If a candidate is unable to complete a certain task required for a particular job, the employer can delegate job duties across a team so that tasks are shared and staff can contribute in relation to their strengths. For example, a swimming teacher who is a wheelchair user may be unable to undertake lifeguard duties, and another member of pool staff needs to be present during his swimming lessons. He, however, can then assist the other staff member with their duties, for example, creating pool timetables, contacting clients about swim classes, or dealing with payment for classes. This is a team-based approach. There are many other reasonable adjustment examples. For example, communication support or more time on task, resources being available in a wide variety of accessible formats, adapting the environment, such as adapted chairs and tables, choosing an accessible venue for training courses, and flexible work arrangements. Further information can be found in the Leisure Guide, including access to work support. It is useful for your organisation to have a reasonable adjustment policy and procedure. Let us now consider inclusive practice and consider your own workplace, practice and culture in terms of inclusion. So what is inclusion all about anyway? Inclusion is about making people, all people, feel included. And an organisation with an inclusive approach engages each individual. It offers opportunities for everyone to input into decision making. It gives people a sense of belonging and makes them feel valued. I am sure that's the type of work environment that many of us would like to work within. An inclusive culture is created through the environment, processes and behaviours. Together, help an organisation to achieve inclusion. So if we consider those three factors, policies and processes include things like having an equality, diversity and inclusion policy, embedding inclusion with planning, not necessarily just thinking about disability within one area of work, but across your organisation's work. Monitoring, evaluation and learning. What data do we capture? Do we evaluate that? Do we learn? Do we have a learning culture? Do we have tactics to reach and attract disabled people? What information and support do we provide to give people reassurance? Are our resources accessible? And what positive action do we have in place that actually reaches out and helps disabled people? Now let's consider the environment. This can be easy to consider in a tangible fashion, but also think about it more in terms of the atmosphere of the environment. Is it welcoming, supportive and friendly? Then let's think about how we access the venue, into it and around the facility. In this day and age, many learning environments are virtual, but have we considered the accessibility? Are our resources inclusive? Have we considered the accessibility of delivering courses? Have adjustments been made to consider how roles can be made more accessible? The third factor is behaviours, and this is about everybody in your organisation. Do we consult with everyone? Do we consult with disabled people? Do we really value diversity and seeing the potential in people? And is that seen across your whole organisation? Have you engaged in regular staff training and conversations to call out any discrimination and to ensure there is a positive portrayal of disabled people? Have we considered the behaviours in terms of the mindsets of our employees, of our tutors, of our workforce? And is that mindset considering everybody as a person, and we need to include people by considering their individual need? Have we considered the language and terminology that we utilise and how that makes people feel? And do we call out discrimination and bias? The leisure guides have so much information that help you to unpick these different elements and consider them in your own work practice. Let us now consider the portrayal of instructors and coaches. If we consider the images that are commonly used across prospectuses, marketing material, websites, even just Googling images of instructors and coaches, these are the common images we would find. What do we notice? There are certainly no visible disabilities represented in these images. These images, which are quite traditional, also show people in a certain light. Now let's consider when we think about instructors and coaches with disabilities. What do we now notice about these images? These images are much more positive in terms of the portrayal of disabled people and their ability, capability, confidence and role they can play as instructors in our industry. If we consider the same of instructor courses or job adverts that are out there, similar images are shown here, all of people who are visibly non-disabled. What would that say to a disabled person who was wanting to join your organisation or your learning programme? The search results that come up for a disabled instructor also only show disabled people as being people being taught, rather than the disabled person being the instructor themselves. What could you do around the imagery that you utilise in an authentic way that can represent disabled people as instructors, coaches, etc.? We have explored many topics so far in this online seminar. But what next? It's essential that we initiate a top-down approach. Number one, secure commitment from the executive board and senior management team to enhance the inclusion of disabled people. Secondly, communicate the importance of inclusion for the business and the organisation to all staff so they all adopt and adhere to the inclusive policies and practices. Third, lead the way with senior managers demonstrating inclusive behaviours and challenging anything that undermines an inclusive ethos. And four, embed accessibility for disabled people in strategic plans across the organisation's different departments and make managers accountable for change. Today has really been the start of the journey in implementing the new employability leisure guidance in your organisation. Now let's consider how you can take what you've learned in the leisure guidance to make this happen in planning and reality. Insight is essential. What data do you know already that can help you to determine how well you are performing in terms of inclusion for disabled people? Can you set yourself a benchmark of where you are now? Within this insight, it's useful to consider both qualitative and quantitative data, including the consultation with disabled people. Spend time to review your policy. It should be an equality, diversity and inclusion policy that considers disabled people throughout your opportunities in employment, learning, training, development, etc. And consider the need for that reasonable adjustment policy and procedure that we've talked about today. Based on the data and the review of your policy and practice, make recommendations. Set targets. Consider where you are now, where you would like your organisation to get to in terms of including disabled people. Based on those recommendations and targets, create an action plan for change. And don't forget to monitor and report your plan back to your senior leaders. This should also be a cycle, so repeat the process time and time again. This is important in terms of embedding this across your organisation. To move us forward, now let's devise actions for change. In doing so, pause the video to consider these questions. Maybe grab a colleague for 10 minutes to discuss these and discuss what you've learned in this online seminar so far. Once you've explored these questions, it's then time for you to write down your 3 actions for change. So we have 3 questions that hopefully can lead to 3 actions for change. Question 1. What do you do already that works well and you could do more of? 2. What could be an opportunity? And 3. What areas need improvement? Pause the video now. We hope that by considering those questions, that has assisted you to create some actions for change. We have now come to the end of our online seminar together. We hope that you should now be able to have greater confidence to persuade your colleagues of the benefits and importance of creating an inclusive approach for disabled people, training and/or employment in the leisure sector. You should now be able to identify and understand the challenges disabled people face in accessing training and employment in the leisure sector, and you will have considered your own workplace practice and culture compared with the principles and factors of an inclusive culture. And finally, you should have explored potential solutions and devised 3 actions for change. Thank you for your time today. We hope that this workshop has been helpful, and we look forward to seeing the impact that you make now on the lives of disabled people in training and employment in the fitness and leisure sector. Thank you.